Battlestar Galactica Season 3, Episode 10. The passage is over, but we still had to go fracking back here on RHAP. We know scripted TV. We knew Cat once upon a time, but today we ship her through the passage. We say thank you, as we often say, to the package, and we break down the swan song, the very important mid-season finale, Mike Bloom. The cat is out of the bag.
You talk about the swan song. Could it be that Cat was hit with a lethal dose of electromagnetic radiation, and therefore, I don't know, Josh, maybe this is too on the nose. I didn't see her die. And so
Okay.
right now, she is both alive and dead. And for all we know, much like the long break between Lost seasons 2 and 3, we'll come back from this, bit of a hiatus and see Cat wake up in the jungle naked with superpowers.
Did you say the words Schrodinger's cat out loud?
It's pretty much there, right? How could it not? I mean, listen, there's got to be some stuff on Galacticast about this. This is so perfect that they had a character named Cat slowly dying of radiation poisoning. Come on! Come on!
It's Schrodinger's cat in this episode of Battlestar Galactica, except she did.
Yeah, this is really interesting.
Like, usually Schrodinger's cat is like, are you alive? Are you dead? But she did. I guess,
dead.
to your point, if Cat's a Cylon, maybe she could pop back up, Mike.
No, Deanna's taking up all the refreshes. She's using all the ammo on herself.
Yeah.
That's going to be the big twist is actually the Cylons were only able to recharge themselves, 100,000 times. And Deanna used up 79,000 of them. So they're on limited supply, much like the rations that put forward the main storyline of this episode. It's good. This is like those, again, I keep making the Lost comparisons, Josh, but like these latter day, season 4 or 5 episodes where it's just a reminder, oh yeah, they are stranded on a deserted island. I guess they do have sort of minute day-to-day things to care about. Here we have this where in the midst of all the interpersonal drama was happening as recent as last episode, they're like, oh yeah, we're starving.
Yeah.
We need some food. And
yeah,
so
they're really hungry in the episode. They don't have any food on board. They're like sharing crackers, Mike, at certain points in time.
Yeah, sharing crackers was my nickname in high school. I mean, Josh is bringing the props this week with the pizza slice as well. You are making all these pilots salivate as they're watching it. They are just, though I would say,
Mike, we're an audio medium. No one needs to know what I'm doing. Oh, right. We do video versions of Down the Hatch now. People are watching Mike Bloom dance and watching me eat a slice of pizza. I shouldn't be eating pizza on the pod. I'm going to mute myself until I finish the bite.
I think that, there could have been a world maybe with in a Yellow Jackets-esque horizon where everyone ends up devouring hot dog given the nature of its call sign.
Oh, no. I did have some questions watching this episode, Mike, of I had 2 questions. One, at what point would these people start resorting to cannibalism aboard the Big G? And then 2, my other question was, how deep into that topic are Mike and I going to go today on Down the Hatch?
I would say reverse respectively, immediately. And I mean, they said they only had 7 to 10 days. So I would say
7 to 10. I hope those are business days. Woof.
Yeah,
the one time you're rooting for business days in that calculation.
I mean, according to Tony Vlachos, that's 2 weeks. That's plenty of time.
If we have 2 weeks, we could do it. We could do it.
Yeah, so I would say give it 5 days past that.
Yeah.
Time and a half. Because once they run out of supplies, then I think they truly start looking within. And they really start cannibalizing from the bottom of the call sheet up, in my opinion. None of the main characters are going to get eaten first. And maybe that's representative of this episode, Josh, in that we do lose Cat. And I think your enjoyment of this episode is going to come down essentially to how you feel about Cat. A character that kind of flippantly gets introduced in season 1, has a big episode in season 2, a storyline irrespective of that, of it turns out she's popping stems because she's been worked to the bone. She has this whole thing with Starbuck passing the buck of how much the two of them see each other with the whole Scar saga of it all. But this is really her first major appearance in season 3, besides yet again getting into an argument with Starbuck a few episodes ago. And it turns out to be one and done for her in terms of
Yeah.
major appearances in this. So it's almost like on Star Trek TNG, if like there was an entire episode dedicated to Nurse Ogawa dying or something,
Okay.
where
Yeah.
I think there is runway to build up and promptly land this character. Is it the nicest paved runway out there? No, probably a bit more of a ramshackle rock job done by Kate and Sawyer in the season 3 early
Well,
episodes.
what I was thinking is that Kat kind of feels to me like a not far away from a Taily on Lost,
Mm.
like sort of like maybe like a sweet spot, kind of like a background gawker, right? Like just like someone
Mhm.
on the beach. The sweet spot between just like recognizing Sally Stripes from the background to like
Mhm.
actually seeing a character like Arst, like sort of in like the extreme end, and then the further extreme is Nikki and Paolo, who just appear out of nowhere suddenly, right? Where like all of a sudden they're just on the show, and we're supposed to accept that they've been there the whole time. Kat has been here the whole time. We have seen Kat, we've interacted with Kat, we have had good interactions with Kat, we've had bad interactions with Kat. And then Kat comes in here and she doesn't get buried alive, and it's not as flashy an episode as Expose with the razzle dazzle of it all. The razzle and dazzle is like nuclear radiation in the case of this episode, so it's kind of not the razzle dazzle we're looking for typically, Mike. Um,
Mhm.
so they end up giving Kat like this character who is of that sort of background significance, but has been littered throughout the show. They give her a send off that did she need? Did the show like need to do this? Or was this just an example of the show wanting to do a different type of character episode? There's some really great examples of deathisodes along the way across
Right.
Lost. Certainly, we could like talk forever about some of those. Here on BSG, how many of those have we gotten? Fairly few and far between up to this point, as far as like
Yeah, I mean, like, do we count the whole hostage episode as like a Billy send-off
you
episode,
know
or is that more so a backdoor way into it?
it sort of is, if Billy was sort of like the defining feature of that episode.
Right.
He's not really the defining feature of that episode. He's a feature of that episode, but like Lee gets shot. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff.
Mhm.
There's a hostage situation that's happening. Here there's the food shortage and the nuclear fire that we have to traverse in order to conquer the food shortage, primarily as told through this character of Kat, who is not going to make it out of the episode. So is Kat the right character to tell this kind of story with? Does she deserve it more than other characters have either had up to this point or maybe will have on the other side of this show? I take that kind of out of the equation and side with what you said, Mike. Like, there are people who love this character, who really resonate with this character. And if this was an episode then that like really resonated with you, I totally get that. I think that there's still something really powerful in this episode, even if it's not an all timer for me personally. I think that there's a lot in this episode about how Kat and like Kat's past and her present are
Mm.
interacting with the future for a character like Starbuck, maybe, or even in the case of like how her life in and her sacrifices informing some of the other people that she surrounded herself with. Like you could imagine, like Hot Dog. Who's the dog without the cat? Like what's
Yeah,
this going to look
exactly.
like moving forward? Starbuck. I don't know how often you'll see her be like, when Kat was dying, she told me
Right.
this. Like, it's not going to be that, but I just think that the way that she wears it at the end of the episode, the way that Adama is so paternalistic at the end of the episode,
Ugh.
and like basically like all but reading her a bedtime story.
Ugh.
I think that there's a lot of like sweet moments in this episode about finding victories through defeat. The ultimate defeat being Kat's death, but the victories being what she brings out in people around her and what
Mhm.
she's able to, put her life on the line for and save. That she saves so many people at the cost of no additional lives other than
Well,
one big one.
yeah, and I also think that her story, which again, you could take or leave the fact that we get it all contained within this episode, but is a great reminder, as we talk about in the realm of Lost, of the tabula rasa, that it doesn't necessarily matter what you did before, it matters what you do in the moment. And this entire idea of how we write history and how people are remembered, that the central conflict comes down to Kat has a shady past. She basically is the BSG Don Draper in taking someone else's identity and using it to pull herself up by her bootstraps. And it comes down
My
to
name
like,
is Sasha Whitman.
yeah, exactly. And so this is kind of like her Kodak pitch, right? This is her big carousel at the end of the day. And it comes down to, okay, let's largely obfuscate what she did, because what's more important is what she's doing now, which is her becoming this hero of the fleet who threw her life on the line, not only time and time again, but particularly here in such a high risk operation. To your point, it's kind of tough to both live in the moment and appreciate the beauty in that. And I totally agree to see the reactions from Adama and Starbuck in particular, but then also compartmentalize it with the episodic nature of the show and be like, there is a very, very, very good chance that if anything, her name is being brought up as just an aside by a character, and nobody is going to necessarily be living in the post-Cat grieving cycle next episode.
No, probably not. Let's talk it through, though. We'll go all the way through this episode of BSG, The Passage. Of course, if you want to write in, we would love to hear from you. Down the hatch, RHAP at gmail.com. That's down the hatch, RHAP at gmail.com. You could also write in not just for feedback, not also just to deliver your various scores for each and every episode of Battlestar Galactica as we go, but you can also write into us for asking to join the formerly known as Post Show Recaps patron Discord, where the Down the Hatch channel still exists. I owe a few people responses. I've been seeing some people reaching out. So influx of new members, ahoy! If you'd like to be one, you should write in down the hatch, RHAP at gmail.com at no cost to you. Just meet some fellow hatchlings and talk about the pod. We'd love to have you. Speaking about talking about the pod, let's talk about the show, Mike, but let's talk about a pod that talks about the show very quickly. I don't have a ton of insight into the making of this episode from Battlestar Galactica this week, which each and every week the great Brendan Fitzpatrick goes back, listens to. It's an old podcast from 2019, 2020s from Mark Bernardin and Trisha Helfer, talking about each and every single episode in a spoiler-filled way, which is not what we do. So Brendan goes and he brings in relevant material if there's anything like production-wise. This week it's like a little thinner on that, but it does set the table for the fact that the remaining episodes of Galacticast would be recorded during lockdown. This episode, The Passage, was recorded by Galacticast on March 17th, 2020, and Mark Bernardin and Trisha Helfer were like on the immediate side of things starting to close down, and this episode being one in which there's some measure in which like the house is burning down here on Battlestar Galactica this week. Like the Big G itself is set ablaze, the whole fleet is going through fire, and there's no food. There's a shortage of supplies. Mike, they're even eating the paper. So I think that watching this episode during that time that the Galacticast was covering it must have hit very, very differently. We're a little further away from that stuff right now, though I think I could still summon how like watching episodes like this and episodes about like supply shortages will forever feel a little bit different than when this episode, certainly when it originally aired.
Well, yeah, and especially even looking at our own comparisons, right? That we were watching when the lockdown started, the beginning of season 2, when you have people holed up in their bunkers and claiming that the world is diseased outside. So we know firsthand how difficult it can be to sometimes engage with media that, as sometimes as bleak it might get, serve as a form of escapism when like there's a harsh dose of reality radiation that hits you in the face, but especially given how
reality radiation is a good alternate title for the realityflash.com, where people can hear Mike Bloom talk about the latest goings on in reality TV, including sometimes when he gets into rivalries with people on social media who were previously reality stars. Confused? So are we. Check it out, thereealityflash.com.
There we go. A nice hidden plug in the beginning of this, because context is needed. And don't worry, I have 25 minutes to provide you with
the biggest Mike Bloom beef on social media since you were beefing with Carl Agathon.
Yes, exactly. And suffice
Who
to
you
say,
now
this
recognize.
person has shown up on a DVD cover of
Yes,
3. But
correct.
all that is to say that, yeah, it must have been such an odd opportunity to just have everything kind of line up in the way that it did. And just the idea of, and we didn't really focus on sort of the citizen perspective, right? Of like scrounging for supplies and what you would do to try to get ahead of another person. That selfishness and selflessness, of course, have been twin phoenixes of themes when it comes to Battlestar Galactica in general, but it kind of gets skewed in favor of a more, hey, we found a place to go to. It's just going to take all of us essentially throwing ourselves into planet Chernobyl and just trying to kind of like play hopscotch a bunch and hope we don't stand too long in one spot.
Yes, and by the end of this episode, Kat will have won the Chernobyl prize.
Yeah, and I do believe, isn't there a cat very much affiliated with Chernobyl, the HBO series?
I don't want to talk about that if we can avoid it. All right, well, let's talk about the cat farewell. The cat's in the well, and the well's in the... No, it's the cat's in the bag, and the bag's in the river. So this is going to be Season 3, Episode 10, The Passage, directed by Michael Nankin, written by Jane Espenson. It originally airs December 8th, 2006. And we've got 2 storylines really to talk about. We will mostly be talking about what's happening with the fleet, but there's a little bit of Gaius Baltar. There's just like
we took a week off and we're stopping back for like some mystery expo dump stuff. I feel like that's kind of gonna be the source of our main mystery for the rest of the season. We should also say, Josh, right now we are officially halfway through with Battlestar Galactica Season 3. Feels like a bit of an odd halfway point when I'm certainly mapping out my chapters and eras of the season. This will not serve as the intermission, but very interesting, I think, to look back on where we started versus where we are now and what the show is choosing to focus on.
For certain. Okay, so when we begin, we find out about this shortage of food supply. There's contaminated food. It's tainted the entire supply. Athena, who, again, I'm just loving calling her Athena because we can do that now. Athena has found algae on a nearby planet that's going to taste like shit, but it's just straight protein, so who cares?
Yeah, exactly. These are those initial days of Survivor, right? Where you're starving so much, you're eating termites that, yeah, they might serve as small sources of protein, but a little bit goes a long way. I'm
concerned that it could be Soylent Green.
To be fair, they are eating living organisms as much as they might not throw a fuss about it. I did have a random question, Josh, because we did see Roslyn, talking on speakerphone about all of this with Ty and Adama. It did make me wonder, and we evoked his name earlier. Has she hired a new Billy as of yet?
There was a little Billy in the background, though. I
noticed him. I was like,
"There's a background Billy in this." Yes. Okay. Thank you. Yes. I would have forgotten to bring this up, but I was watching it today. I was like, Billy, because there's
what if the actor just showed up again?
In the Roslyn scenes, there is a young man, a polite-looking young man, with like a little suit. And he's just like kind of like sitting in like a rigid chair outside of the principal's office kind of thing in the back row of Colonial One, like black dress jacket, gray slacks. So like he's ready for the bar mitzvah. And that could be Billy. It looks like it's Billy, but we're only lingering on him very quickly. And Mike, I have no recollection of this being an actual character. This could be a blink and you miss it, Billy. I really don't know, but I clocked it as well.
I would have loved if the actor who played Billy pulled a George Costanza, not a hot dog Costanza, and just showed back up. And he's like, "No, I never quit the show. I never got killed off. I've been here the entire time." Or could have lent a lot of credence to Billy being a Cylon as well.
You guys resuscitated me on Cloud 9, remember? And then you said for being shot that I could be just like on vacation until I felt like I was A, physically recovered, and B, like mentally prepared to do my job again.
Well, like, what he could do is he could just be like, "Oh, I got shot and I got put in a coma for the past 2 years. What's been happening, everybody? Yeah. We're just back to normal, right?"
Yeah. No, Tori's the new Billy, but why is Billy sitting in Why is not Billy sitting in Billy's old seat? Why isn't Tori sitting in Billy's seat is a question that I have. But whoever this young man is, I do not believe we will ever see him again. Doc Cottle is going to say, hey, so good news. We've got rations. Bad news. We won't make it past 7 to 10 days. That's how long we've got. And Athena is due back any minute now, having explored the area a little bit further. Hilo, who, again, Mike now fully recognizes as cover boy.
No, I will say
Cover boy Carl.
When Lee does the whole briefing mission and Hilo puts himself in the line of fire,
yeah,
I will notice, if you look at his hair as he's sitting there, not similar whatsoever
my
to what he looks like on the Blu-ray cover.
My guy, my friend, it's just his fracking
I will
hair.
Never let this die. Much like Billy's soul, this will never die.
Oh, is that like Billy's ghost that's lingering? Could be a force ghost. Anyway, so yeah, that's not a lot of time. Hilo is worried. Athena does come back, but she's looking rough, and they're wearing like these like wristwatches throughout the episode. They're like, if this wristwatch goes black, you are dying. This is bad. You want to turn around as soon as possible.
A life or death mood ring, basically. But the two moods are white, A-okay, black, you're basically dead.
Yes. So it's basically to test the radiation that surrounds this horribly irradiated planet that apparently has food on it. We're going to check in with the pilots in the bunk room. Leah and Starbuck just cohabitating that space like nothing has happened. So I think that's interesting. Just like, let's put a pin in that. They're splitting their like little Ritz crackers. Everyone has like a table wafer or two, and Kat's being accused of not sharing all of her food with the group. There's some fingers that are being pointed there. She gave a protein bar to Doc Cottle, and Starbuck was like, yeah, after like I spotted you with the protein bar. So starts off poorly for Kat in this episode. She's being accused of Jean Valjeaning at a time where everyone is Jean Valjean. Like, not fair.
Yeah, exactly. Why single out the one when everyone is Valjeaning at this point, just trying to hide that all their call signs are 24601. And
right.
It sets up the fact that, again, the more things change, the more they stay the same. That Starbuck and Kat had kind of had this beef going on from last season, as we saw on the previously on. And despite everything that Starbuck has gone through, there's one constant in her life, and it's just this real hate boner for Kat.
Yes. That remains from the moment they met to just about the moment that they part ways. Okay, Athena comes back. She says, okay, great. I found a way through the star cluster. There's a planet there. It's got a ton of algae. I'm telling you, like, good stuff that we can eat. But we got to go through all of this nuclear fire to get there. So they have to figure out how they are going to do this. Sharon says that we cannot just like jump. The star cluster is way too big for just a single jump. It's too big to go around. This is an editorial note from the team behind the curtain that going around the planet would take longer than the rations allow. So we just got to get there fast. We got to get there with some time on the clock. Like, you don't want to be there on like day 10. You want to get, if you have 7 to 10 days left, Mike, I think as best as you can get it, we want to be there like day 3. Day 3 feels like a really good day for that 7 to 10 day stretch. I would not feel comfortable with day 4. We're pushing it, but I could do day 5. I'm already out. We got to get there day 3 or 4, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, this is like the Rice negotiation from New Era Survivor, right? Where it's like you're doing the mental math, trying to calculate, yeah, it could be 7 to 10 days more, but like, how will I be in 7 to 10 days? Will I have the mental faculties
to be able to be in 7 to 10 days is a question I ask myself often here in 2025, Mike.
Again, everything has happened before. Everything will happen again. And so it makes sense that they're in relatively sound mind, but it's a plan that does sound like they're not, as Adama is ultimately going to be the one to come forward with an absolute renegade of an idea, because you could say, all right, let's bring the metaphoric horses to water here. Let's bring everyone in the fleet down to the planet, because otherwise it would take way too long for Athena to basically ferret all these, supplies of algae back and forth. The only issue is not only is there the radiation, but the fact that it is so damn cloudy down there that if you jump down there, basically any navigation system gets completely jumbled and fried and becomes useless. except for the Raptors. And so, Josh, they utilize the buddy system, or at least they
Yes.
try to. That basically they're going to bring the rest of humanity essentially all onto the Big G. They're going to have skeleton crews, Jude Law and the kids, manning all the other civilian vessels. And they're going to have each pilot in a Raptor tagging alongside one of those vessels to make sure, hopefully, in a perfect world, everyone is sort of side by side as they keep doing all of these jumps down to the planet's surface to make sure that nobody is in one spot for too long.
Yeah, like hold my hand, I'll walk you down. Like this is a blindfold challenge, but like
Yeah.
I'm here. That's basically the strategy. And so that the Big G with the vast majority of civilization, because like if they don't make it, if the Big G doesn't make it, it's better for the vast majority of civilization probably to be on that ship, because it goes south very swiftly without the Big G around. So that's the game plan. That's what they're going to try and do. The light is blinding is another one of these issues. Dradising in and out is going to be difficult. And so, yeah, Lee's going to go and brief the pilot on all of the circumstances surrounding this. We're not going to get fed until we've got that algae. So, like, let's go and be like as strong as we can be. The radiation's going to take care of our appetite. We're going to be so sick that we're not going to want to eat. An interesting strategy, Mike. Let me contract norovirus and just start like puking my guts out so that I'm not hungry during the food shortage.
I mean, it's either that or the stims. I'm actually surprised that the stims did not play more of a part. Like, I thought we were totally going down the addiction rabbit hole. Instead, we go down the, like, hey, you were a human trafficker storyline. But
yeah,
really, outside of Kat saying, oh, taking stims is a bad idea because it burns through your metabolism faster and causes you to exhaust quicker, really not a big to do. In fact, I don't even know if they took the stims.
Well, she objects. She's like, it's going to be really, like, from experience, like this will be bad without food in our system. And Starbuck, who's like a little witch in this episode towards Kat, she's like, well, you used to really like stims. Like, cool, make fun of me for my drug problem in front of the entire class.
I didn't write my own storyline to have this become an after-school special. They all did. I'm just playing a part
I
of
didn't do it. I'm just here making a check.
I'm so excited. I'm so scared.
I'm so scared. Yeah. She's a Luann Cat trained, but she could have instead taken, instead of Cat, she could have just been Jessica Spano. Would have been interesting. Showgirl would have been an interesting.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
Lee says optional stims. You do not have to do drugs. I repeat, you do not have to do drugs. Drugs are not mandatory here. We then see, like, on the other side of like the mission briefing, that Kat's gonna run into a guy who's online for food because they're doing like please sir, may I have some more, like, gruel buffet lines. And one of the dudes on is a guy named Enzo, Mike, and he says, hey, Sasha, what's going on? And Kat says, I don't know you. I don't know that voice. I don't understand why you're calling me Sasha. Can we talk about those in private? You're sort of spoiling the mood and blowing my cover. So it turns out, Mike, Kat is not Kat. She's Sasha.
Yeah.
But that was a lifetime ago.
What's interesting is we have Kat interacting with the Meow Meow himself, Enzo. I mean, this dude sucks. I hope that there's a deleted scene where Starbucks like, get the frack off my ship. I really hope off screen she just threw him out of an airlock, because this guy is Garbo. He looks like
He is Garbo.
He looks like the stand-in they used for Josh Holloway through all 6 seasons of Lost, and he just stuck with the hairstyle.
Yeah, he kept it. Well, I mean, there's a great hairstyle certainly back then. I would say, like, it could probably still be a great hairstyle now. Depends on how you rock it.
That's the thing. It's unfortunately I have to kind of like mix the personality in with the look, and so therefore he does not pull it off, because here he is just like calling her out on her shit, when at least our narrative on Kat is like, yeah, she did a lot of arguably bad things in the past, but like she's trying to start over. She's been doing a lot of great stuff. She's got a good thing going. And here comes this douche who's probably been doing, picking up what Lee tried to stymie in the black market stuff last season. Like, Enzo's probably the one being like, yeah, but I still gotta traffic those human beings. It's a necessity in the new form of humanity.
I don't know why he had to come onto this show and bring Kat. You don't forget you were a human trafficker into the equation. Like, come on, some secrets are meant to stay secret, guy. We find out that Kat was like kind of involved in like human trafficking and drug trafficking and stuff before the big G, and then like someone died and she took the identity, and this was even before the Cylons came into town. So she like took an identity before then, and then the Cylons eradicated everything, and Kat under her new guys ended up becoming Kat. But that's a heck of a history to be running away from, Mike. And we're kind of just like airdropped into like a lot of like feel good stuff about this character along the way of like, well, Kat, you did it. You tried really hard and you helped all those people and you did it, Kat. We're very proud of you. She's like, I'm sure you are. I would like to talk to you about the fact that in my past I was a human. They're like, don't say the next word.
Nope, you're fine. Let you
Don't
die the way we want you to we want to remember you by.
Yeah, but nope. Don't you
Nope.
dare say it.
Nope. Oh, it's sleepy. Take your pills.
Yeah. Go to
I'll
sleep.
tell
Go to
you a
sleep. Go to
story
sleep.
about two other characters that died.
Yeah. Do you want your death episode or not? So Kat eventually is going to meet up with this guy Enzo. Like he's like trying to like shake her down for food. And so we're like starting to get a little bit
Which
of
is
that.
also like a terrible tactic. I mean, I guess he tried to suggest blackmail of being like, come on, I know you. Can't you squirrel away a little bit of these rations for me? These cornerless biscuits?
You don't even have raisins? No raisins? You're telling me there's none? No raisins anywhere. Like none of those little red crayon boxes anywhere on the ship.
Yeah, no. Well, there's also no corners on those raisin boxes too.
No corners indeed. Let's go to the CIC, and here he is, Saul Tigh, showing up to raucous applause, Mike Bloom. After a bit of a hiatus, Tigh has gone back to the workforce.
Yeah,
and retirement.
I mean, what I would say is like, I can't say it's a mixed reception. Like, he does get applause from everyone except Gaeta, which is understandable considering that when Tigh ended up getting dismissed, the last time he tore Gaeta a new one. And so he's not incredibly happy about having to work alongside him.
And
but
he also was about to like blow Gaeta out of the airlock, right?
Very
like,
true.
He was about to send him off into his deep space death.
Yeah. And so I imagine we're going to get some sort of storyline down the line in this season of like the two of them being able to see, for lack of a better term, eye to eye and hopefully finding some common ground. But yeah, I guess if we're trying to map this out, the boxing referee was sort of like the soft launch to having Tigh out of exile and joining the group again. That went over pretty well. So yeah, he's back in the full uniform and he gets a hell of a first mission back in the stripes.
Yeah, some follow-up questions. One, can we assume that this is Monday that this episode is taking place in then? Because like if Ty's coming back to work, he's probably coming back to work on a Monday.
I mean, the great question, and this is, again, going back to the Star Trek stuff, how they didn't necessarily have weekends. They just did things on like rotational shifts. Are there weekends in Battlestar Galactica?
So.
I mean, the entire discussion around why Laura Roslin wasn't reelected was because of this idea of people seeking normalcy, right? So do you think they instituted a 5-day work week?
I don't know. I mean, on the other side of I think that unfortunately they just like don't have the time for that. There's just too much going on. So, okay, so we're okay. We've got a lot going on in this next part. Hold on, let me just pause down. Okay, Mike. So that's my first question answered. So it might be a Monday, but it really depends on if they were willing to give into the 5-day work week. My second question is, what happens to Hilo? Hilo was XO, was he not?
Yeah. Okay, so now what's interesting is they talk about this in a deleted scene.
Okay.
I raised my eyebrows a bit upon seeing Hilo, who I did recognize sitting amongst the pilots getting briefed, and he does go on a mission. It did make sense in retrospect because it's like the first time we saw him, right? Him and Boomer were piloting a Raptor down to Caprica, so he has the skills. But I'm like, what is he doing here? He's the CIC. And Josh, I think he was low-key demoted. Just like Adama's
demoted.
Yeah, just like Adama's own son was at the end of this episode, spiritually and also literally.
Yeah. We didn't think that they would just like kind of do like a do-si-do, like salute, then put it right back the way that it was.
I think if you extended the edit of that scene maybe 5 more seconds, Adama just then switches the names back again, or just tosses Kat's name in the garbage.
Yeah. Anyway, I feel bad for Hilo if he got demoted. He didn't do nothing. He did nothing wrong. Hilo's been a
Yeah,
good
and he
guy.
built up a whole year and a half rapport with
Was he just
Adama as
too
his number
good as
one.
a trainer with Lee, and like Bill Adama is like, Hilo, your talents are needed elsewhere. There's a
Well, I
lot
guess
of
that's the
other people
question.
requiring cardiovascular training.
That's the question. Is like, what does he do now? Because it's a far fall. Yes, Lee did go from commander of the Pegasus back to CAG, but that's nothing compared to the fact that Hilo went from essentially the number one to the captain to just another
Yeah,
pilot, which is
what's
where
he
we
gonna
first
do?
met
He's
him.
just gonna be like Raptor Pilot 2 again? What a
I
he
don't know. Could they
didn't
fit him in as like an advisor to Adama in some way?
I don't know. Well, we'll see. We'll see what Hilo's job prospects look like. Not in this episode of Battlestar Galactica, though. We've got too much else going on, including the Raptors, the first wave, guiding all of these ships through the star cluster. The Galactica is aboard this first wave. We lose a ship, Mike, the Adriatic,
Mm.
lost in the sea.
Yes, unfortunately, due to Hot Dog. And God, I feel for him in this moment as, again, it is all so fast. They jump in and basically, it's like a Mingle, Josh, a classic game. I wish they
Hmm.
had such delightful earworm music playing, but basically, like, you jump in, everyone scrambles to find their buddy, and then before you know it, you have to jump out again. And Hot Dog is not able to pick up on finding the Adriatic, which is the vessel that he was assigned to. And it's too late. The window passes, they jump away, and Hot Dog decides to follow protocol and feels incredibly remorseful about the fact that he, due to no, part of his own, had to basically leave behind an entire skeleton crew of people.
And I mean, like, this is the kind of thing that we've seen on this show time and time again, like these like sort of like moments of like desperation and then human error or whatever.
Yeah, I mean,
Claiming
hell,
like
that was like one of the first big moments from the first regular episode, right? With
right.
like blowing up with this ship for fears that the Cylons have taken it over and risking hundreds of, if not thousands of lives.
So we're seeing that again here in this case. Hot Dog internalizes it very poorly, but like this is all of this is
Much
such a
like I
clap.
internalize a lot of hot dogs poorly.
Do you not digest them well, the hot dogs?
Honestly, it really depends. Despite the fact that I've grown up as a tri-state kid, I don't think I dare fancy, a street side dog from any Joe Schmo.
Well, not just any Joe Schmo, but I've been getting hot dogs in New York again. Let me tell
And
you, great success. Quite
so far,
delicious.
knock on wood,
So far, so good. We're
until
getting.
that one jump happens, and then
I'm
it
I'm
won't be.
I'm being risky. I would say within the last 2 years, I've gotten like 3 stops at a New York hot dog spot. I don't know how many dogs. Probably 2 per visit would be my guess. So let's call it 6 hot dogs. I felt fine and I felt nourished and delighted by the garlicky hot dog treat that I've had in New York. So, Mike, give it another shot. See what it does to your insides. You might internalize it better than you think.
Well, I think it might go as well as hot dog with the Adriatic.
Oh yeah, then hot dog barbs. Right.
I might have the
right.
equivalent of the Adriatic Sea coming out of my butt at the end of this.
Yeah, hot dog's got norovirus. Cat looks like she's like already dead. But she's not.
I feel terrible for this actress. We'll get to it later with her death scene of like, if I'm a performer and I get the chance to do a death scene, I know that is such a meal. But if I
Yeah.
have to go out looking the shittiest I have in my entire life, that's gotta dull the shine at least a little bit, right?
Well, I mean, if you have to like sort of like play that out, right? Like if it's like like they found your body in a scene, like that's a fun scene to film, I think. You're like, "Oh, I'm playing dead." But like if then you have to like walk around like you're a ghost who died across the Atlantic on the Titanic, like that's not fun. No one wants to be that. That's scary to play for too long. But that is basically what she looks like. And she keeps going back out. We're doing more trips. We lost 1 trip, but by the 4th trip, we're doing okay. Kat loses her ship, unfortunately. The Carina. The Carina does not make the jump with Kat. Her radiation pad is black, so she's just been blasted with this stuff. She's having a hard time, Mike.
Yeah, and so I don't know. It'll be interesting to sort of break down what we think pushes Kat to ultimately make this choice. I think it's a culmination of things, not just one, but this is certainly one of them. I think that I would imagine Kat feels to a certain extent she's on a bit of a suicide mission.
Yes.
And it's like, if I keep going and I make the jump without this vessel, I'm gonna die anyway. And so I might as well go out doing what I have been trying to do since I took on this new identity, which is to help people, which is to, support people to the best of my ability with my little raptor. And so she also
My
takes a
little
look at
raptor, my little raptor.
and so she takes a look at the fact that it is not all sparkles and rainbows, unlike My Little Pony with the rest of the pilots too.
What's
Like
the raptor equivalent of the My Little Raptor equivalent of the bronies? The Braptors?
the Braptors. Oh, there's so many Braptors. There's so
Yeah.
many dudes being so like
Oh man,
invigoratingly into their Raptors.
I love Velociraptors. I'm so into them. Yeah, I just love to. I mean, sometimes you do see those people that are running around in those Velociraptor costumes. You ever see that before,
Oh
Mike?
yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, exactly. The giant inflatable T-Rex costume.
Yeah. You could squint and that's a raptor. Like that's probably not as big as a T-Rex anyway.
Yeah. So suffice it to say, people are going about as extinct as the dinosaurs are right
Uh-huh.
now. As like hot dogs puking up along, everyone is like getting immediately hosed down, but are all looking out of sorts. But as you talk about, Josh, they don't have that much time for recovery, as they are
They just
still
gotta
in the
keep
planet, so they have to
yeah,
keep going.
they keep getting sent in, sent back, sent in, sent back. They're exhausted. They're irradiated. Even though Ty and Adama are not going out and doing this themselves, they're exhausted. Clearly, they're talking about all of the various moves and pieces that need to get taken around the board in order to get everyone through this situation. They talk about the food shortage and how Adama said, "Is it true that people are eating paper?" And Ty says, "No, there's a paper shortage." And they both just die. They just start laughing for so long. They're pretty crazed out as well, Mike, at this point.
Well, it very much is a flagship example of like it's moments like this that all you can do is laugh. Just like sit and relish in how truly ridiculous this situation is. It is such a fantastic pressure valve. I love it as a stop down moment between these two characters. Goes to fortify the love and natural, admiration they have for the Admiral and for each other. That these are two old friends that through thick and through thin, they kind of speak the same language. And then also just like a very fun joke on Ty's part. Maybe I just have Survivor on the brain, Josh, but I had a real deep cut of remember when Survivor Blood versus Water, John Cody wrote in his bio that one of his pet peeves or like fears was people eating paper.
No. That was like a real like concern of his?
I mean, I don't know, concern or just something that really grinded his gears, but I'm
How
pretty
often is he
sure
dealing with people eating paper?
apparently enough to write about it in his bio. Let me
Wow.
see if I was just making this up. No, pet peeves, slow thinkers, talkers, and movers, people who eat paper, illogical, irrational, and inflexible people, excuses, and mouth breathers.
Wow, that's just like really casually in there. But I'm not going to question any
I
further.
think he was trying to make a sandwich out of it and like slip in a really odd ingredient to try to disguise the palate.
Yeah, the paper could look like sheets of bread if you squint. I watched this scene, and all I could think of was, "Is this why they don't have corners on their paper? Because they eat off the corners."
Yeah, you just pick up a piece of paper and go, "Arr, arr,
Yeah,
arr,
yeah.
arr." All right,
You can
moving
eat the
forward.
paper, but you gotta only do corners. Everyone's like, "That's fine. Corners are the best part anyway." Um, Kat is going to get caught talking to Enzo. And then Starbuck goes up to Kat and says, "All right, I've caught you, and you're the worst little piece of doo doo I've ever met. You should feel bad about everything you've ever done." And Kat's like, I do. I'm trying to tell you that. Starbuck's like, "Well, good. Think
Yeah,
about that some more."
Starbucks like Adama disproportionately thought that he was responsible for the Cylon Revolution, but it's you,
But it's
Cat,
you,
because
Kat.
for all you know, some people have been saying that the Cylons made their way into humanity not because they were shacking up with Gaius Baltar, but because they got smuggled in through human trafficking, just like the stuff that you were doing. So I guess, Josh, is Cat low key Han Solo? Like
Was
Han
Han
Solo never
Solo a human trafficker?
He wasn't a human trafficker, but he was a smuggler, right? That's what Kat sort of tries to at least pitch herself as initially. She said she was a trucker, that she was someone
Listen,
that was ferreting things back and forth.
I unfortunately don't have a lot to go on here other than what the show gives us. And what the show gives us is trusted character Starbuck saying, you were a human trafficker. And then me seeing this guy Enzo and taking one look at him and saying, that guy's a human trafficker. So I imagine that Kat is also a human trafficker. So I think that's a little different from just a smuggler for me. That being said, the Cylons needed to be smuggled in. That doesn't track with
wasn't that the whole point of the Cylons looking human-like, was that they didn't need to do that? That's what Kat tries to bring up in like the spare moment before Starbuck continues to drill into her.
So honestly, in my estimation of it, Kat's fine as far as it goes with like culpability with the Cylons infiltrating mankind. When it comes to like trafficking human people, I think that's where we run into some issues with Kat.
Yeah, and so again, I wonder how much we can now sort of assign to the character and what she does around this idea of kind of focusing on what we thought about the beginning of Sawyer's arc in Lost. We looked at Confidence Man, and there's the question of, well, if Sawyer didn't have the asthma medication, why did he allow himself to be tortured? And we talked about the fact that, much like Jin talks about later on in the season, Sawyer kind of fancied himself someone that had committed a bunch of atrocities, including very recently when he killed this guy, Frank Duckett, in cold blood for no particular reason. And like, this was a way to not necessarily atone for them, but pay for them with his own blood and his own willpower. Maybe Kat kind of feels this way as well. It's a little less self-flagellating, but maybe more this idea of like, I have to balance the karmic scales, because even if I didn't traffic in Cylons, I still did some objectively capital B bad things in what I did for a living.
I don't think that like Kat's story goes the way that it goes just because she's bullied by Starbuck, right?
Right.
Like Starbuck doesn't help. And I do think Starbuck, like not knowing that she's doing what she's doing, for sure, like pushes Kat to a certain place. But I think that Kat only feels that way if like the kinds of things that Kat had done in her past life with Enzo were like rather bad. So we don't need to like know the full details, but we know how Kat feels about them. And she doesn't feel particularly good. She also doesn't feel good because her hair is falling out. Her radiation badge is like pitch black. So she switches it with Helos.
And then Helo's like, oh God, I'm dying. Oh,
I'm dead.
No, this is it. Oh shit. Oh man. All right.
crap.
Well, good thing I'm not dying as the XO or anything.
One last request. Put my face on the Blu-ray cover.
Maybe that's actually how
that's
this
like
all
his tag. Like they put Lee was supposed to be there on the Blu-ray cover.
They swap him out.
They swapped him out and put Hilo on.
No, imagine if he approaches a dub and he's like, all right, Mick tie the cag. I'm a dying man anyway. That's my last wish. Let him enjoy it. I'm on my way out.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. It definitely makes some sense to me. By the way, I just love that we could talk about Hilo. It was on the DVD cover. He was there the entire time, looking at you. You looking back.
But I wasn't looking at him.
Him looking at you like, and you looking at him being, for a long time until it's like, oh, so, it goes like that sometimes. Kat boinks Enzo. Like during all this, we have like, I couldn't quite tell, like, was this like a flashback to the before times, or like where is she having time to have sex with Enzo? Also, is she irradiating Enzo?
Oh, that's a great, you know what? Actually, I might have to give even more kudos to Kat than I could in this episode. If she wants to spite this man on her way out by being like, I'm going to meet Marie Curie the shit out of you. Good luck when your dick falls off due to the heavy amounts of radiation it just took in. That would be an incredible spite move.
This is as scary as it follows. This is a really terrifying.
It falls off more like.
Yeah, it's good.
But I wonder. There's two different reads you could take from this, right? One of them is like, Kat has hit a moral low, and so she's like, God, if I truly am Sasha, if I always was, then like let me fall back into old habits and lay with this guy. The other one could be like, I just want to get rid of this. I want to shut this guy up because I'm very fearful that he is going to leak my past. So again, that doesn't make sense coming after the Starbucks scene, right? Because Starbucks, she says, don't tell the old man. And Starbucks like, no, you're going to tell him yourself. And so she's kind of already cornered as it is. Kitty corner.
Kitty cornered as it is. Maybe she just maybe she knows, like, I'm probably not coming back from this. I would like to get laid one last time. I feel like a very valid choice. Beggars can't be choosers. If Enzo's what you got.
Yeah, do you think she made a bucket list?
Oh, yeah. That she went on and, like, tried to do all the items on the list with Jack Nicholson and Morgan Freeman.
Yeah, there's a whole actually series of deleted scenes where it's just Kat spending her time like staggering through the halls because again, she's still highly irradiated trying to get done all of these things she wanted to before her life expires.
Yeah, all while Peter Gabriel, Salisbury Hill is playing in the background. It's a really great montage. Okay, she's going to go. She's going to get into one of the Raptors. She goes on trip 5. There is a ship called the Faru Sedin.
Which sounds like the name of a Star Wars port.
It's giving Star Wars and Trek more than it's giving Galactica, I feel like. But it goes missing. Everybody jumps. Kat doesn't jump. Kat and this ship are now off Dratus. Then they come back. Kat is able to hunt it down, figure it out. Let's get to where we need to go. Kat returns to the Big G, a big hero's welcome. She raises her arms like, yeah, I did it.
And then dies.
Oh, it's horrible. It's
so good though. Like I know she has a fantastic farewell scene, but like honestly, if the character had died right there, and she went out doing a like double John Bender fist pump on her way out, would have been the best death in Galactica history.
No, but she does collapse, and I shouldn't laugh at that. I shouldn't laugh at that, but I don't know. Something about it did tickle me. It's just so
it's kind of the dark humor, right? Of like everyone be like, "You did it, Kat! You're the oh no, no."
This show has done this kind of thing. Like this is not as viscerally upsetting as like those 4 guys like wheeling around and then bombing themselves to death in the hangar. But you'll never forget that, and this kind of has some of that energy, this moment, and sort of like the surreality of Kat's collapse. But we wrap up Kat's story with Starbucks swinging by. She says, "Hey, everybody's done bad stuff. I didn't mean that you're not a good person. Here's enough sleeping pills to do what must be done. I gotta go." And so that's it. She's like, this might be the last human interaction that Kat ever has, and I'll just end it with like, yeah, I gotta go.
So at least there's a little bit of her in her Starbuck way trying to apologize. She says everybody is stuck with the things that they're not proud of. And again, it speaks to this character in general that she is somebody who will make mistakes just due to her own, personality or the circumstances she put her own headspace in, and like then blames herself for those choices and has to live with them. So I think it was kind of a wake up moment for her to once again realize that her and Kat are not so different, that she threw a pretty big stone through her own glass house with being like, aha, you have baggage of bad stuff you did. You're not the perfect person that everyone thought you were, Kat.
Right.
Only to realize that's basically every character on the show. And so she does say, I didn't mean what I said. And yeah, I guess what I imagine happens off camera is that Adama like forces the pills down her throat, because like she did not look like in a state where she could even pick up her arm.
I think she probably ends up just like going relatively quickly would be my guess. I don't know that I want to like think too like Adama being like go to the light, go to the light, go to the light. Like how did he do this?
Like full Chief in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah,
throws the water fountain out the airlock.
Pretty sure that wasn't on his bucket list. But he does, the scene with Adama and Kat is very sweet, and talking to him about how like me and my wife both thought both times it was going to be a girl. And she's like, "Did you want one?" He's like, "Yeah, I did." And he said 3 is a good number. He wanted 3 kids. Sweet Adama.
It's so good. It's so incredibly good, and it's so interesting to contrast it to his big speech last episode, right? Where he's like, "I've gone too soft. I'm letting you all partake in this when we've got a job to do. I've become too friendly with you." when it turns out that I think one of his superpowers is his ability to connect with his crew. I mean, that's personally what I look to in a boss, as someone to treat you as a person. I can't think of many other commanders, let alone admirals, who would sit down with one of their pilots and basically be like, I'm holding your hand until the end here. I will tell you a sweet story to bring you over to the other side. And then,
Sometimes, Big Bill, like there's issues with Big Bill, but then there's moments like this where you're like, oh man, he's like the sweetest of the guys.
well, also, he gives a reminder about his own recognition and reconciliation with the elements of death, right? He invokes two names of people that were in his life that left suddenly in the form of his wife and in the form of his son, Zach. And I know they say, things work better in threes, and this is sort of the one to round that off. That
Yeah.
this is a man that when he talks about his family, you see Edward James Olmos's eyes soften to sort
Yeah.
of symbolize the softening of that character, to say that this is a guy who has found his way to grieve through those tragedies, but almost wears them as a badge to
Yeah.
say, I get it, I understand it, and it has steeled me to be able to help this person through that situation. So what I love about this scene is it not only speaks to the character, it also reminds us of the fact that he has been burdened with this past. And much like Kat, it is up to him to recognize whether he wants it to profoundly affect the way he is now, or if he's going to almost like wear it as a badge as opposed to a burden.
He's going to do the swap out on like the big whiteboard that has all of like these like velcroed names on them, Mike, where you get to see a
Yeah,
variety.
the org chart of the big G.
Yeah. So I took some screenshots just to see
Oh,
like,
okay.
are there any names of people who we don't like really know very well?
Wait, we got a Narcho appearance, I
Yes,
saw.
Noel Allison, or is it Noel Allison? That's Narcho. Corin Dix, that's Chopper. Yikes. John Burke is Snitch. That's Snitch.
Oh, I don't want a guy named Snitch in my team.
I'm not
I'm not letting
Snitch.
Snitch in on shit. He's gonna know nothing about me. You know what? Maybe Kat was like, Starbuck, the reason why I didn't say anything to anybody is, if one iota of this gets back to Snitch, the whole ship's gonna find out about it.
Please don't let Snitch know.
Snitch is like the resident gossip girl.
Yeah. River Brigden is the name of a pilot, Mike. River's call sign is Hiccup.
No, come on! This is where you eschew the call sign. River Brigden is too badass of a name. Just call
River Brigden's the first name, last name kind of guy, right?
Yes, it's very Anthony Figursky. Like, let them be called by their proper name. Call sign be damned. Even if it takes a few extra syllables to like express, it's so worth it.
Okay, well then you tell me this: should this person have their call sign or their first name, last name treatment? Jarrell Keefe. Call sign Buzzy.
Oh, but I do like Buzzy. Buzzy's
fuzzy, as in like
Fuzzy.
Fuzzy Wuzzy was a bear. Yeah, Fuzzy Wuzzy.
Yeah, no, definitely use the regular name, because here's the thing about call signs: you can't use a call sign that could be used as a regular piece of vernacular. Like, you can't say, oh, the signal is fuzzy, because then Fuzz will say, yes? I don't want a Laurel and Hardy situation when thousands of people's lives are on the line, okay? There's only one time for joking, and that's when Ty and Adama are talking about eating paper. Choose a different call sign or use your name.
Okay, three more that I caught. One was, I believe it's Amali Amante. She's feline. We've got Marsha Case, Showboat, and Troy Mines, as in Sever, not X versus Sever, just Sever. Troy Mines. Now, Sever is the name, and last name is Mines. Was this calling the shot towards Apple TV Plus's Severance all those years?
Yeah, is there someone named Ants and Sever and Ants like to ride together on the Raptors?
Yeah, Severance. Yeah. Everyone's shipping those two. Cat's gone. We see the photo of Cat.
Yeah, the memorial wall. We have not seen that in a long time. Though I would imagine after the whole new Caprica stuff, they opened a whole new wing up to put some more pictures up.
You would think so. let's close out the episode. The Cylon fleet, Mike.
Yeah.
Let's go and see what's going on with Gaius Baltar, where Baltar and Deanna, Baltar and a 6 and Deanna, they've been doing the deed, but Baltar's got some questions, Mike.
Yeah, so again, it's been a while since we've checked in here, especially from our perspective, considering, again, the Yadis that we took. But just as a reminder, Deanna has been having these sort of odd prophetic dreams. And so now she is sort of, it's almost out of the leftovers, Josh,
Yeah.
right? She has been like trying to find that edge, that liminal space between life and death, where it seems like basically every day now she is asking a Centurion to kill her so that she has this big vision, and then she draws it afterwards to try to figure out what does it all mean. And finally, someone is catching on in the form of Gaius Baltar.
Yes. So he's got questions about what's going on. He's going to ask Deanna, like, hey, let me ask you something. Why do you keep killing yourself? Deanna's like, what? He goes, Deanna. What? So he is, onto her. Like, you've been downloading and re-downloading and re-downloading. Why? And I want to know about the final 5. So this question about the final 5 comes up again. But an interesting aspect of this is like Baltar is asking Deanna about the final 5 with the interest and I would say the hope that he will be told that he is one of them. He seems to be craving the he wants to be a Cylon is what it seems like right now.
Yeah, and so I'm reading this a couple of ways because it might be that the Stockholm syndrome is finally taken hold and he's like, all right, I might as well be a Cylon at this point because nothing else makes sense. Or is this a line? He tries to express to Deanna, really guilt her, being like, I'm sick of being a traitor to one people and a hero to another. Like, allow me to finally, much like you're trying to find your way in this weird liminal in-between space, this is where I am as well. Let me find out the truth for sure. And it works. As is the case with Gaius Baltar, I just have a tough time believing whether or not this is sincere on his part.
So we'll see if he means it. If there's another play, I think is a very worthy question. Deanna's going to take Baltar to see the hybrid. The hybrid says,
it's like, well, I'm having a bunch of weird musings. Let's go to the source of it.
The hybrid's going to say a few weird things. The hybrid says, throughout history, the nexus between man and machine has spun some of the most dramatic, compelling, and entertaining fiction. Is that just BSG patting itself on the back?
What a great writer honestly, this hybrid is.
Totally fair. Flex. We've got no issues with this. The hybrid additionally says, intelligence, a mind that burns like a fire. Find the hand that lies in the shadow of the light, in the eye of the husband, of the eye of the cow. Baltar figures this out because he has in-universe context clues that we don't. He's like, oh, Hera, some would say that she was cow-eyed, and her husband is Jupiter, and the eye of Jupiter could be a planet hidden in the shadow of light, probably a cluster of stars. Sort of like what it sounds like the rest of the show just discovered.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I mean, here's the thing. I'm not trusting it. I don't think this is BS on his part. This is not the nuclear warhead hand of God stuff. I do think that, much like we talked about with the Lion Nebula, like, he does know his business, and I do think it would work properly, especially from our perspective, if it turns out that hybrid is sort of taking future storylines, kind of cutting them up and jumbling it up just to foreshadow what happens Helena Targaryen style. What I more so ask is, look, I know that, as Deanna will express here, okay, maybe they're sort of mixing faiths here. They're bringing in mythology from the gods of humans to mix in with our one true God. But, like, have the Cylons just not been listening to the hybrid for all these years? So they did not even one of them be like, she might be saying something. Can we just stop for a second and try to piece this together? Because this guy just breathes in here, sticks his hand in some goo, and says, all right, I have a star map to where we need to go next.
That's what he says. And look, so far, Baltar has gone like he's gotten further with these people than I think anyone really would have expected. And I don't mean that just from a viewer perspective, but I mean it from like the character's perspective too. Like the Dorals were ready to cut bait long ago. He's here by the good Grace Park of not Grace Park, but of Six and Deanna. And Deanna seems to be kind of like on a, like on her Laura Roslin prophecy shit right now. And Baltar has dealt with that before. So is he either being deliberately manipulative of a type that he has seen previously? And is he trying to weaponize this to some degree? Or is he also like sort of like in his own place of desperation? We know that he was in a confirmed low while he was, the president of the colonies, especially at the end of the occupation. Could this just be a guy who's also desperate for like any of this to add up to something? It's one of the reasons why Baltar is one of the best characters on the show. He's just like you cannot just like judge the book by the cover. There's a lot to uncover when it comes to his true motivations. But that's at least where we leave him, and what he's describing at least sounds like the same language, the same things that we see in the episode that's being described for Algae Planet. I don't know.
Yeah, so here's the thing. We'll see where this goes. We're trying to nudge things at least a little bit forward with what's going on with Deanna as she really emerges to the forefront as arguably the main Cylon, now that Six has kind of taken a very, very, very large back seat, I'd say, in this season. I would be intrigued to see if Trisha Helfer has had anything to say on season 3 of the Galactic Cast. Obviously, now circumstances notwithstanding, but like it does feel like now looking back halfway through the season, it's been a bit of a down season for all of the Sixes here.
Yeah, the Sixes have not had as much to do as certainly I would like, because I think that Trisha Helfer is one of like she's a DVD character.
Yeah.
For sure.
She's not only that, she's got the winner spot. She is front and center on that DVD.
Okay. So how about this? This will only further fan the fire for you. On this episode of Galacticast, Trisha Helfer, it's around like the 11:50 mark on the episode, according to Brendan, says that you can see a Six who is following behind Gaius at one point. Trisha Helfer says, "I don't know her. That's not me." And Trisha Helfer says, "I'm barely in this episode anyway, and that's not even me when you do see me walking away." And so Trisha Helfer goes on to say that she saw it immediately. She's trying to keep track of it because of like she wants to remember where she was during these shoots. And she was always very specific about the various people who played the other Sixes, like the stand-ins and stuff. And she would correct these people on like how to walk, how to do this, how to use Sixes physicality. And Trisha Helfer then on the podcast apparently was like, I was probably quite annoying to these people. So that's pretty funny. But yeah, to your point about like it being a reduced season for Six, even more reduced than you know.
Wow, that's so interesting. I mean, we talked about this with Lost season 3. It sort of is pick your poison here, your bottle of sleeping pills. Would you rather be sort of forced into the storyline, but with much lesser quality plots, or like when you are in the forefront, it's really good stuff, but it comes at the cost of you taking a step back with your role? I think it really depends. And look, given how episodic this show is, I would not be surprised if I eat my words as soon as next week and it turns out we have like a huge 6 coming out episode.
All right. We may be in a word shortage next week, so I don't know if we'll be able to afford you eating your own words. Let's give some MVPs and LVPs out, Mike. I've got 3 MVPs. You've got 3 LVPs. I'll just begin by telling you that I'm giving 2 of my 3 MVPs to Kat and 1 of my LVPs to Kat. I wanted to make sure that ultimately I am a net positive here. There are some drawbacks, such as human trafficking, and she does indeed die. Typically a no-no for me when it comes to MVPs and LVPs, but she dies a hero. And I think it's a sweet episode on a lot of levels. It's not an all-timer for me, but I do think if Kat's gonna be the CAG here this week, I can swap Kat in for one of the other MVP points I was probably going to give out. So that's where I'm beginning.
Yeah, say what you want to about the way the character was built up, whether it was proper or not, but it was a really good send-off for this character. I think represents, again, a lot of the fun complexity that exists within this era that Battlestar Galactica occupies, which is like, how much do you bring in from who you were to who you are, who you came with, who you're leaving with, and Kat sort of represents this very big example of trying to unburden yourself from the past to represent more who you could be if given this second opportunity. And the fact that she goes out, putting her life on the line to save a whole ship of people is, as Adama puts, one of the most heroic things a character does individually on the show. So I threw her a point as well. RIP Cat. I believe that was her 9th life. We'll see what her point is.
Yeah.
I did give one to Adama as well. I think that, again, not only did he have a really sweet scene sitting by Kat's side as she went, but also he's the one that comes up with this idea that arguably is
Yeah.
going to save many, many lives. And yes, they'll be probably licking algae off of rocks, but at least they'll be eating.
At least they'll be eating. If it's food, I don't think they're going to complain too much right now. I gave my final point to Colonel Ty as a measure of me joining in with the round of applause. I don't like being left out, so I wanted to
Round
clap.
Howard of applause.
Yeah, I wanted to give a round Howard of applause to Colonel Ty. Also, just let the Mike Hogan laugh when he talks about the paper shortage. That scene, like, if you hadn't given Adama a point, I probably would have given it to him because Edward James Olmos's reaction in that scene is very blissful, wonderful. LVPs, I already gave one to Kat. My other one is to Starbuck for basically bullying Kat to death. Is sort of kind of a way of looking at it. That's
Yeah, it's tough. Like, I obviously things should change from episode to episode. Like, I kind of laid into Starbuck last week, and I still feel kind of bad for that, so I laid off of her this week. Though we'll talk about it. This has not been a good season for Starbuck.
no.
I decided I had 3 LVPs. I decided to throw 2 onto Enzo because who is this SOB?
Yeah.
I would say one for being a human trafficker and the other one for being a stupid interloping character. And I gave my last one to Deanna just because what you're trying is so incredibly risky and uncouth, and you are not subtle about it whatsoever. You are getting caught out by Gaius Baltar, who is so driven by his own libido that he could have not noticed it if there was any other shiny object in front of him. Instead, you are the shiny object. And yes, he may have helped you in this moment. The fact that she thought she was so tricky and turned out to get caught flat-footed will earn a bit of a demerit in my book.
Yeah. Just got to get Frank Libido out of my head.
Yes.
Okay, so those are the LVPs.
We're not going all the way, are we?
we're not doing it in Guam, are we? Okay. Definitely on the Mile High Club. Okay. The big thing here is we've got a new LVP for the season so far. The Cylons are always at the bottom just because it's very easy to dump upon them. So they have -4, but sharing the -4 spot after getting an LVP point this week, previously tied with -3 with the likes of Bulldog, Leoben, Ellen, and Gaius Baltar, now moving past those people, and the only named character with -4 LVP points, Kara Thrace, Starbuck.
Is there
Sinking like a stone right now.
Is there an equivalent character to this, Josh? Like someone who takes a bit of a hit, markedly so, in the middle of a series run? Yeah, like I'm trying to remember what we did with Locke in season 3, or Jack might be a good example of that.
Yeah, Jack's a decent example of it where like he is sort of minimized and I think like hard to root for through most of season 3. You could certainly say that about Locke a bunch. I think maybe to some extent it's almost like the show's trajectory with Saeed, like a fan favorite character who you love very dearly, but now all of a sudden, like, why is the show writing this character this way? Or like, why is the character so deep in the doldrums? Whether or not Starbuck works her way out of this better than Saeed worked his way out of Lost, to be determined. But I think like that would maybe be the comp for me.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. That tracks for me. And so hopefully she'll be able to pull out of this nosedive. Again, it's tough because it's not like I'm not enjoying the Starbuck we get to see. I think she is the perfect example of like containing so much ire and aggression, but because it's baked in with so much trauma. I wish her the best. I hope her character does look better in the light. Again, she does a little bit of like a microcosm of a nosedive at the end of this episode by being like, "Yeah, I'm sorry I did that. Here's something to help you." I hope that happens from a macro perspective as well, and we get some time for Starbuck to quote unquote redeem herself. Listen, maybe it helps that the two biggest problems she had in the group of pilots were with Lee and were with Kat. And in one way or another, both of those problems have been taken care of at the moment.
Yes. Okay, the Cylon versus the fleet, Mike. Last week we said NA, which I still think we introduced. I think that's our first ever NA. What do you want to do this time around? I mean, we're at Algae Planet.
We're at Algae Planet.
We lost some people along the way. The Cylon side of the storyline, no one really accomplished anything, but maybe they've got like a place to go to, like a next step. It's like tie-ish for me, but
I would say tie-ish. Like, I think both parties were able to make meaningful progress, but they didn't directly face off against each other where it felt like, okay, one is definitely leagues ahead of the other. I think what's different between a tie and NA is that NA, we did not see any Cylons whatsoever last episode. And also the plot itself felt like a literal hunkering down and not focusing on bettering humanity nor the course towards Earth. So that's a little bit different to me. Tie is like, well, they never faced off against each other, but they still both made some progress. NA is like, nothing really applies to this construct. And so we kind of have to mark it as such.
How do we want to rate this episode, Mike, on a scale from 0 to 4.2? What were you thinking? What does this feel similar to in terms of previous BSG rankings for you?
It's a good question. So what did I give Scar? I gave Scar a 3. Or 3.2. I think it is better than Scar. I think, like we were talking about with Starbucks, something that really took me out of Scar was just how, unscrupulous of a character Starbuck was in there. Not to mention it did, again, the stupid, like, media res, out of order editing. I think this episode improves on that markedly. We gave Hero a 3.5. I definitely like it more than Hero, but I think I like it less than Torn. So I'll just settle with the happy medium and give it a 3.6. That's where I'm sort of settling right now.
Okay, a 3.6. I think that Scar is a good comp, especially as another Cat heavy episode. And which one do I like more, this or that? When I think about Cat, now that you have watched her death episode, I think about her death is like the first thing that I think about when I think about Cat. The second thing I think about is like her weird rivalry with Starbuck trying to fight Scar. And so I don't love that episode. Gave that a 3. I like this one, I would say, like significantly more, but maybe not like significantly more than, say, Hero from earlier this season, which, fun podcast. So we left everyone on a good cliffhanger, but the episode itself I thought was good, not great. I think for me, that's the same for The Passage. I'm going to give it a 3.3. Props to all the people who really love this one. Just not my favorite, but I think there's a lot of good in here, all the same. Mike, before we frack off, anything from the deleted scenes you want to talk about, you want to bring up here?
Yeah, I mean, I wish that maybe we're just now so spoiled about having the extended uncut version of Unfinished Business last week, because there is some stuff that just couldn't get fit into the episode from a character perspective. One small thing is like Hilo getting nervous not only about suiting up again, but about going out into the radiation, considering that unlike his wife, he is definitely more susceptible to it. And Athena basically tries to talk him down, showing that relationship. She does call him Carl, which, like, while it makes sense because obviously they're married and she's not going to call him Hilo, it's still weird to me that, like, yeah, I guess his name is Carl Agathon, and we just haven't really focused on that. There is a really meaningful scene between Kat and Lee. This is before they do anything, before they jump in, when she is very clearly nervous about what's about to happen. And Lee, like, does a little bit of a banter with her, right? Says, oh, I'll change your call sign to Friendly Fire because you've challenged the CAG right now. And also gives a little bit of hard advice, essentially saying, I don't like excuses. I hate to make them. I hate to be around people who make them. I think the biggest to do out of this is we see more as to how Starbuck figures out Kat's past, that we see her pull Enzo aside, and now we actually see that, like, she says, "You're going to get the frack off my ship, but first you're going to give me some information." And then we get to see what happens before Starbuck confronts Kat about her past, that she pulls Kat aside. And this is after, Kat loses that ship. And Starbuck's like, sorry about your ship, but that's all the sympathy I can have for you. And it leads to a very tense moment between the two. It turns physical. They start pushing each other. And so Kat's going to say, like, "Oh, what's the matter, Starbuck? You're jealous that the pilots look to me for safety rather than you." And as she's about to, Starbuck then turns things on her, being like, "Oh, here comes big hero Kat,
Yeah.
savior of the downtrodden. You think your shit doesn't stink." And as Kat walks away, Starbuck says, "Hey, Sasha." And then she turns around, and that's what propels us into the scene that we saw. Last one is just sort of a little button at the end of the episode. Rosalind makes a public statement about the state of affairs. And, we see everyone listening in on the CIC, including Kat, as it turns out that she was maybe not exactly telling the truth about that protein bar, but she did not keep it for herself. She gives it to one of the poor refugee kids that's so hungry.
Interesting. Okay, so good amount of deleted stuff for this one. They had a lot to say about Kat on her way out the door.
I mean, it is quite literally better late than never, but I would have liked to see these in the full context of the episode, maybe at the expense of cutting the Cylon stuff, but also looking ahead at what next episode is titled. I'd imagine it had to be a necessity to get through that stuff to get us to probably a very important place for the plot.
Yes, indeed. Before we get there, real quick, we add 4 different jumps, 39 jumps overall right now. There are 14 additional fracks in this episode, 7 fracks from Kat. Kat gets 9 fracks overall this season, 7 of them in this
On our
episode.
way out.
Hot Dog fracks off 4 times in this episode. He has 4 fracks in the season overall.
I'm pretty sure he says it in the course of like 30 seconds in response to having to jump away without the Adriatic.
Yes. Adama gets a frack. Lee and Starbuck both get a frack. They are current clubhouse leaders this season. 17 and 15 fracks for Starbuck and Lee, respectively. Mike, as you note, the name of the next episode, The Eye of Jupiter. What are you expecting?
I would hope this is when we're going to get a bit of a Cylon humanity confrontation. When did this episode air? Because I'm trying to think, could this be like a Pegasus to be continued cliffhanger that we get out of this episode?
It aired 1 week after the passage. It aired on March 24th, 2020.
Oh, okay, so this was not, I imagine the show did not stop down. Regardless, I still think we are finally going to get these two kind of meeting head-to-head since everything happened with New Caprica, considering that, to your point, from what Baltar is describing, sounds very similar, at least, to where humanity is currently bunkered down, taking in some algae. So I certainly hope that's the case. I have expressed how I am not incredibly high on this Cylon ship storyline. That stuff like the projecting and adding to the lore of the series is fun, but it feels a little aimless. And so I'm glad that we quite literally have a destination to go. And I imagine we're going to find ourselves in that location next episode. And we get to see a bit of a merger happening, get to see maybe some characters interact with each other. It's been a while since they've talked about the fact that Baltar is alive, as was confirmed. And so I hope that does get confronted. And I keep holding out hope for this, but that conversation that Athena had with Deanna down on New Caprica about how they're lying to you about your baby, I hope she hasn't been forgetting about that. And, decide that's been leaking in, much like radiation, into Kat's bones. And that's something that finally comes to the forefront next episode.
All right. Well, we will find out in 2 weeks' time when Down the Hatch returns. We will be offline for a week. Not a surprise offline week, but an intentionally planned offline week. And then we will return 2 weeks from now to talk about The Eye of Jupiter. We appreciate your patience. As always, we appreciate you writing in Down the Hatch, RHAP @gmail.com. If you've got feedback, ratings, anything you want to send our way, Discord requests, we got you. Hit us up, down the hatch, RHAP at gmail.com. Also, subscribe, of course. My gosh, the thing you can do to help us continue. Down the hatch, RHAP, wherever you get your podcasts. Battlestar Galactica, Down the Hatch will work as well. You can hit us both up on the social media. Mike is currently a social media superstar at a Mike Bloom type. If you have yet to just pile huge heaps of positivity and warm, good feeling towards Mike Bloom, you can do that at a Mike Bloom type. Mike.
Thank you, Josh.
You're welcome.
Thank you to everybody. If you need context, don't worry. I put an episode out on the Reality Flash about how I suddenly became the main character in the very type of news I try to report that has then propagated many positive comments and copy pastas as well, which has just been such a surreal experience. So check all that out. But thank you for the kind words, Josh. I will be missing our time over the next week to talk about this, especially now that I feel like I'm on a roll. I know who Hilo is. We lost Kat. I'm ready to see what happens on the Eye of Jupiter.
You figured out the whole show. There's nothing more for you to know or do.
Well, that's just going to make the Eye of Jupiter taste that much sweeter when we have to wait a week to come back and hopefully get the show down that I've been promoting here.
All right. We look forward to it. The Eye of Jupiter coming back when Down the Hatch returns in 2 weeks' time. Until then, everybody, take care. Bye-bye.